Okay, right, that seems to have settled off. Okay, so let's get started then. Welcome today to the first in the series of Leadership Lounge. This is an online web series that we've started just for our leaders and managers in the business. So it's kind of a bit of a private members club, if you like. We're going to be focusing today's session on keeping your employees emotionally healthy when they're working remotely. So this is number one in a series of sessions. We've got 5 planned over the coming weeks. Just to give you an overview, we've obviously got today's one with our panel guests, Chloe, Tom, Jodie and Alex, who you're going to get an intro to soon. But everyone give a wave so we can say hello and good morning. Okay, so the next ones we've got coming up in the series and our confirmed guest speakers are next week we've got leadership mindset. So Hugo and George are going to take us through a bit around kind of how to keep a leadership mindset during remote working, but also how you can keep that kind of teaming culture as well across your team and across stakeholders that you're working with. And then we're going to follow up by looking at productivity. So how to keep productivity high when you're working from afar. Moving into remote working is hard for anyone, but actually keeping your teams going and keeping them doing work is also hard. So we've got Hina, Steve and Bev joining us for those sessions. And then we're going to move into collaboration. So how to keep your remote team in sync as well. So very well driving productivity, but how do you actually keep them working together and going in the same direction and following that same kind of goal? So Adrian and Maria are going to join us for that. And then our final session that we've got planned in May. It doesn't mean it's the end of Leadership Lounge. We'd like to keep this going afterwards. But the final one for May is to look at kind of setting vision, setting your OKRs and KPIs and achieving goals. And I think that fits quite nicely at the end of May when we start to look at the launch of SuperPay in June and how we're going to roll that out. So we've got Nuno and Luke joining us for those sessions. So our guest speakers today, I'm going to hand over to them now just to give you an introduction to themselves, what they do, and then we'll go into talking a bit more about how we can keep our employees emotionally healthy. So handing over to Chloe. Chloe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So my role at Paymentsense is Head of People. I've currently got a small team of 3 at Paymentsense, but I've managed and people managed up to sort of groups of 30 in the past when I used to work in hospitality. So got quite a broad range of experience, but I think as well a lot of my people management experience comes from my role in HR. So I spend a lot of time talking to different managers, understanding different situations and challenges they might have and giving advice where I can. I put this in my bio, but I'm super passionate about employee engagement and the link between happy and engaged employees and them driving better business results and being more productive. And for me, I think how somebody feels about their manager is one of the most important factors into how engaged they're going to feel in a business. So that's me.
Great, thank you. And Tom?
Hello everyone, I'm Thomas Ias. I'm the team lead for the Absolute unit, and we're responsible for, up until very recently, we were responsible for the maintenance support of Mothership and QuickSign retentions, MSX, the various parts of it that are there, and some of the current world stuff. And the billing portal. So my management experience has been, as well as managing Absolute Unit here, there was the company before, I was running a team there, with people managing a team there, but also managing a stream of work for a remote team as well, so kind of managing 1.5 teams. Yeah, that's the kind of my experience here. And at Paymentsense, a lot of the new starters for the graduates that we've had have come through my team as well. So that's something that I enjoy doing.
Great, cool. Thank you, Tom. Okay, hand it over to Jodie.
Hi everyone, I'm Jodie. So I've been at Paymentsense for over 4 years now, and I've been managing customer service for pretty much 4 years. I did start on the phones, and then after about 6 months, I became a team manager. Obviously, my role is to keep agents motivated. Customer support is obviously a complete wide range of calls. It can be really pleasant calls, or it can be quite tedious calls. So obviously our ultimate goal is to just give 110% customer satisfaction on each call. So that's what we strive for every day. Before Paymentsense, I was actually traveling. So yeah, I don't have any management experience other than being at Paymentsense.
Cool, thank you, Jodie. And handing over to Alex.
Morning, guys. I'm Alex. I've only been with Paymentsense for 3 months. I've joined as the retentions manager, so I'm still very much the new boy. My experience of managing teams is quite varied, really. I've managed field sales teams, inbound collections teams, operations teams, some administrative functions, so a real kind of wide variety of different disciplines within businesses, and obviously experience of all the different challenges that brings. So yeah, looking forward to this call, and nice to meet you all for the first time if I haven't spoken to you before.
Lovely, thank you, Alex. Good. So that's our panel today. So we chose this panel because there's a kind of wealth of experience across so many different areas of the business, and we wanted that to really be a big part of these calls, so that you guys can hopefully relate to different parts from different people as well as we go through this session. So just to kind of take it back to employee wellbeing and what it is we're actually looking at today before we go into the panel discussion, I think it's important for us to note kind of where we are today and what's kind of at the forefront of us as people managers and what we need to consider. So during a pandemic, and obviously I think I speak for everyone in saying this is the first time any of us have experienced anything like this before and having to manage in these sort of times, but a lot of your employees are going to start to feel demotivated or stressed or kind of just unsure about things, and that's where they really look to their managers and their line managers to help keep them motivated and understand their anxieties and help them along the way. And things we have to consider is there's a lot of uncertainty around jobs, not just in Paymentsense but beyond that as well. People have partners, they have family members who have lost jobs, who are on furlough. There's worries about social distancing in general, so not being able to see your family and friends and teammates at the moment, and being put on furlough yourself, like I said, or potentially losing your job, or seeing others put on furlough as well. It's important to understand that it doesn't just have to be them, it can be their teammates, seeing people within their teams being put on furlough or losing their job, that can cause anxieties. And as people managers, we need to consider, right, how do we actually help these people, or how can we just stay connected with them and really check in and see how they're going. And there was a study by Deloitte back in 2017, but I found this quite a striking number. They say 1 in 6 workers are likely to be suffering from a mental health condition every single year. So to put that into context, there's 31 million people working in the UK. So you're looking at 5 million workers each year could be suffering from mental health issues. That's without a pandemic. So now imagine adding this on top and kind of what you're going to see from that. And it's important to recognise that a lot of us will have people on our team who are struggling with this, or we know people that within the business that are struggling with this, and how can we actually help them and just check in with them and be aware of it and help them deal with some of those anxieties as well. So we have to engage our EQ. So our EQ is our emotional intelligence. So how can we spot signs of people feeling distressed? We don't have body language at the moment. We don't have that face-to-face interaction where we can see it. So we have to kind of be conscious of this when we're having our conversations with people. And there's 3 kind of categories that you can look at for this. So you can categorize it into psychological, physical, and behavioral elements. Now, part of these, like I said, they are going to be very much face-to-face signs that you'll look out for, but you can kind of keep attuned to this and keep aware of this in the conversations that you're having, and by just asking them how they're doing or how their weekend was or their week was, you start to get an idea, and some of them will start to kind of slip in points that you might think, actually, you said that a few times now and I'm starting to see a pattern here, perhaps I need to just check in that everything's okay. So just looking at those physical ones, like I said, although you can't see this face to face, there are ways to question on this, but things like fatigue or headache or changes in sleep patterns. Have people said that they're not sleeping well? Have they said they've had a really bad night's sleep for the last week? Is it worth just checking in that everything's okay, that they're not stressing themselves with workload or the things they're doing? Do you hear tension or trembling in their voice? You can see it visibly when you're face to face. When we're back in the office, that might be a sign, but can you hear that there's kind of a tenseness about them? Or perhaps on video call, you're noticing that their body language is a bit different as well. Other signs are chest pain, sweating, weight changes. A lot of that can be attributed to stress as well. Obviously weight changes right now. I think everyone's conscious of it, being at home and not exercising as much anyway, but just consider those kind of physical signs that people might not be feeling as good as they should be. And then you've got the psychological stuff, so anxiety, distress, a bit of emotional tearfulness, low mood swings, indecisions, loss of motivation in their role, distracted or lapses in memory are all signs of kind of the psychological aspects of mental well-being, mental health well-being. And then the behavioral side of stuff is things like increased smoking or drinking. We don't necessarily as managers know what's normal for people, but just being aware of these signs. And sometimes team members might come to you and say they're noticing a bit more of this, and perhaps it's withdrawal from team meetings or team calls. Maybe they started this process checking in every single week with you, and now they're a bit more withdrawn and don't check in as much. Are they a bit more irritable or angry or aggressive in the way that they're talking or coming across to you or to the team? Some people deal with stress by working longer hours, so just putting more and more time into it, and you see them physically online all day, every day. Is it a time to sort of check in and check that everything's okay, and do they need to take a break and time to themselves? Or it goes in the opposite. So do you see lateness? Do you see them taking longer lunches, not turning up for meetings, that kind of thing? An obvious one is kind of worsening performance as well. So it's always good to always check in when you see performance drop. Sorry. So is there signs that performance is going on a downward spiral? Are they making more errors than they normally do as well? Or kind of a typical one is increased sickness as well. So there are ways to kind of check in, and although you might not be able to physically see these, stay attuned to what they're saying in their conversations. And when you're checking in, have they had a lot of sleepless nights? Like I said, do you hear that they're kind of feeling very low and they don't sound motivated? Are they not turning up to team meetings or team social events that you're organising for them, but that yet they were before? So is there a sort of change in that behaviour as well? All of those are signs that it could be something wrong. I'm not saying it is in every single time, but it's something to worth checking in and say, how are you doing? How are you coping with all of this? So we know that, like I said, checking in is an important piece of it. But what we have to be aware of is people aren't always open to it. And that's because of the stigma attached. So mental health is actually the least reported reason for absences or sickness in the workplace. So people don't want to talk about mental health. And like we saw on that previous slide, sometimes people even use working longer hours as a way to cope with it or to deal with those stresses as well. But what you can do is connect with empathy, listen with an open mind. And when people feel heard, their tension's released, they calm down. We know that with things like counselling. We know that if people talk about it, it can help them release those tensions as well. It doesn't mean you have to be their counsellor or their psychologist or go into these things, but you can just be a human being and check in with them and see how they're doing. So I've put some kind of examples, and we're going to talk more about this with the panel in a moment, but the kind of questions that you can ask versus the kind of questions to really avoid that cause stress and anxiousness. But questions to ask are just a simple, how are you doing at the moment? How's it going? How are you finding being on furlough? How are you finding still being at work with less of a team? Just checking in with them to find out in your one-to-ones. Or if you've noticed any of the behaviours that we saw in the previous slide, you seem to be a bit down or upset or under pressure. Is everything okay? I just want to make sure everything's okay with you. Is there anything I can do to help you? Or what support do you need to do better? If you notice that they are, like I said, either working longer hours or they're not sleeping, is there any work that I can delegate elsewhere that would help you manage your workload? Is there anything I can take away from you that would make it a bit easier? So just like I said, it's that kind of human connection and just being human about it. You don't have to be manager all the time and have that kind of authoritarian relationship. You can just check in with them and see how they are for well-being. Questions to avoid are things like, you're clearly struggling, what's up? Why can't you just get your act together? Your performance is unacceptable right now, what's going on? And everyone else is in the same boat and they're okay, why aren't you? So that's kind of it seems like an easy one to say, look, we're all in this together, we're all got the same thing, what's wrong with you? Everyone's different, and we have to acknowledge that, and just check in and rephrase those questions, reframe them so that you get a more positive answer and a more positive reception from them. So we have to prioritize connection over correction. It's important to note the kind of wording there. It's about connection. It's about connecting with your teams and not just correcting. So as human beings, we are wired to connect. We actually thrive off human interaction. We want to, as social beings, always be around people and speak to people and have those interactions. But working remotely takes more effort in order to do that. So we have to make the effort as managers to arrange team calls and one-to-ones and things like that, and actively reach out to them, because you can't just rely on bumping into them in the office or seeing them at the desk. Google actually did a really famous study a few years ago where they talked about how to make really high performing teams and what are the 5 kind of key traits that each high performing team has. And the number one was psychological safety. So you need to make your team psychologically safe. They need to trust you. They need to have empathy. They need to believe that you've got their best interests at heart as well, and really trust in that as well. So it's really important that you create that culture, and doing that remotely isn't as hard as it seems. Once you get into a bit of a groove, you'll probably find your team quite actually enjoy doing this. I know me and my team have talked about we're even more connected than we ever have been actually at the moment, because we're making that time, we're carving that time out of the week to actually get to see each other and have a conversation and speak to each other, which is great. And it's also important to recognise good work as well. So often when you're working remotely, people have this kind of embedded idea that they have to prove that they're working, that they have to prove to their manager that they're doing a lot of work and they're able to keep up with projects and everything like that. And it ends up your conversations and your interactions with them become very work focused, and they become very much about what have you done, what do you still need to do, correcting them on anything that's happened, that's gone wrong. But actually taking the effort as a manager to reach out and just say, job well done, like you've done a great job, you've done some good work, or you've really been working hard this last few weeks, or you've really kept the team going. Those kind of recognitions are good, just to reach out on those as well, and make those an active part of your week as well. And where possible, giving autonomy as well. Like I said, a lot of the time people feel when they're working from home, they have to prove that they're working from home and they're working really, really hard. And you shouldn't have to prove that, because you as managers should be able to trust that your team are doing a good job. And if they're not, there's issues, but you should be able to trust them with that. And so it's important to give them autonomy as well, and help them kind of manage their day a bit more, and not kind of dictate or micromanage while they're working remotely as well. Give them the autonomy to make some decisions on the stuff that they're doing, or all the work they're doing. And I get that's easier said than done in some teams. I know contact centres and things like that, it's a little bit harder, but where possible, give them autonomy. So ways to add this into your week to kind of help with this connection piece. And these are just a few small hints and tips. We're going to go more into discussion in a moment. But ways to add it into your week are team calls. So I think a lot of people now are doing weekly team calls where you align on work plans, but make a bit of time for small talk. On a Monday morning, ask how their weekend was. On a Friday, ask what their plans are. Check in during the week, ask each evening, what's your Netflix recommendation tonight? You know, just make a bit of small talk with them, just to allow the team to bond a little bit more, and allow them to have that kind of bit just outside of work that's not all focused on the work plans and the work that we're doing as well. Have regular one-to-ones. So balance the checks on your one-to-ones between performance milestones and checking in on feelings and concerns. So segment a piece of your one-to-one session to say, right, now let's check in on you. How are you doing? Well, how's it going? How are you feeling? Is there anything you're concerned about at the moment? Is there anything I can do to help you improve? It could just be about their development needs. So, okay, so what do you want to start focusing on? Is this a time for us to start looking at the future and projects we can get you involved in, or development pieces that we can get going for you as well? Is there any skills you want to enhance that we can have a look at as well at the moment? So getting that right balance between the two. You still need your performance piece, but you need to be checking in on your team as well at the same time. And creating Slack or WhatsApp groups as well. So again, not just work related or what stuff you've done in the team or what work you've produced, but posting a bit of small talk on there. How's everyone's day going? How are you doing? Share articles and videos, whether that's around wellbeing or not. There's a lot of stuff going around at the moment with those kind of cryptic puzzles and things like that. Just share them for a bit of fun for the team as well, just to keep them engaged, and encourage exercise and breaks. So encourage them to take some time away from the computer as well. Again, we talked about just a moment ago around how people feel that they need to really show that they're working, which can often lead to people not taking as many breaks as well, or not going outside and taking their hours walk. So encourage it. When there's sunshine, tell them to go and work in the garden. It's okay for them to do that. And sometimes they'll need permission, if you like, to do it. So tell them that it's okay to do that as well. And then lastly, obviously, wellbeing calls as well. So you can do this on a group or one-to-one basis, but it's quite nice to just call around and check in. I've got some of my team working still, and a big portion of my team on furlough. So I like to just every couple of weeks just do a little wellbeing call directly to them, just to check in on how they're doing. But we also run weekly sessions. So on a Friday afternoon, we do our think and drink, if you like, where I give them a few business updates and a couple of things that we're doing, but then we do the fun stuff. So bingo we've done quizzes, we've done charades, we've done Friday night drinks, anything that you want to do, just to keep them teaming together and keep them working together as well, and just checking how they're doing. And anyone that doesn't come to those group sessions, I normally just reach out to and check everything's okay, fill them in on what they missed, and hope to see them in the next session. And you can make that fun. You can move it around. Every week we get a new person kind of volunteering to host the next one, so it's just someone else bringing something to it as well, and they quite like that piece. So yeah, just like I say, the kind of strap line there is to prioritize your connection over correction, especially at the moment when you're managing remotely. So on that note, I think that brings us nicely into our panel discussion. So I'm going to go through and ask some questions around some different topics, but by all means, if you've got questions or scenarios or anything you want to ask the panel, we are going to have a session at the end for questions. So just pop them into the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get those answered at the end of the session. But for now, we're going to head straight into the panel discussion. So let's start with Jodie. Obviously, your team normally works in the office every day. So how's the transition for them from work to working from home been, from being in the office to working from home? And I suppose, as you as a manager, what's been your biggest changes you've had to make in your style of management?
I think one of the main reasons why people love working at Paymentsense, especially in the Hull office, and I'm sure it's the same in the London office, is the atmosphere and the culture that we've created in the office. And obviously the reason for that is all the incentives that we do, the face-to-face interaction that we have with people, all our one-to-ones, everything like that. And I think the main transition for me, and I know the other managers in Hull, has been to try and recreate that culture and atmosphere whilst working from home. Obviously, normally during the day-to-day Slack, yeah, we use it a little bit, but it's normally people come over to your desk or you're going over to other people. And like you said previously, you can gauge how people are feeling by the face-to-face communication. So what I've tried to do is create Slack channels, as many as I possibly can, with my team, and just get everyone buzzing again, just like the buzziness that we have in the office as well. Like one-to-ones, things like that. So we're still having them the same time frame as what we would whilst we were working in the office as well. But it's just spending the majority of the time asking how they are, and finding out what they've been up to, how their mental health is, if there's any issues that they need resolving or anything like that. A couple of agents raised a few things when we first started working from home, that they felt like they needed a bit more equipment and things like that, just things that they needed from the office. So Bev very kindly offered to go into the office and obviously send some bits out for people, just to make sure that their environment that they're in at home is very similar, well, as what it can be, to the environment that we created in the office. We've still been running incentives and things like that, but we're trying to focus it more on things not to do with work. So we've been setting like weekly challenges and things like that are just a bit more fun, and that they can get people in the house involved with, like children, parents, grandparents, and we've found that we've had a really good take on that, and a lot of people are getting involved with it as well. So I think the changes that I've personally had to make are just going from that face-to-face interaction to trying to keep touching base as much as I possibly could, like I would in the office, just over Slack and over phone calls. And to be honest, I think we've all been doing really, really well on it anyway, as well as we possibly can do.
Good. Yeah, I think that you make a really good point as well around the whole kind of the working environment as well, and actually making sure they're set up, because I think the change piece is a hard one to overcome, isn't it? And I think people can feel really anxious and nervous when there's a big change. So allowing them to create that work environment at home and have the equipment and everything just kind of eases that anxiety, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Okay. So Alex, you obviously manage a customer service team as well. So how about you? Have you seen any differences to what Jodie's seen, or are you doing anything different?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting, really. I mean, a lot of the people that work in the teams that myself and Jodie manage, they've never worked from home before, ever in their lives. So I think when we first started this process, there was quite a bit of a novelty factor, and almost a little bit of, this is quite exciting, like being at home doing, I don't have to get up at 7 o'clock. I can sit in my pajamas and answer calls, So to start with, initially, there was quite a need to sort of really keep people focused. Certainly in our teams, because it was new and it was a bit of a novelty. But certainly what we're sort of finding as time goes on is more and more people are missing that office environment, and actually it's beginning to sort of feel as though they're not as connected to the business as they were, just simply because they're not there day in, day out with all of their colleagues. So for us, really, the main thing that's increased is team interaction and one-on-one interaction between me and my team. So we make sure we set up a daily call at the end of the day with everybody, and most of it's just fun and chat, and not really anything serious, but it's just an opportunity for the team to get together every day, and just check in with each other and make sure everybody's doing okay. And then for me personally, I make a point of speaking to each person every day at some point, just to find out, what their challenges are that day, what's causing them a headache, what they need help with, and just try and give some steer and guidance, really. But yeah, it's been an interesting time.
I can imagine, yeah, and you're right about, I think at first everyone does see it as a novelty, but that soon wears off, doesn't it?
100%, yeah. They're all desperate to get back in the office now.
Okay, so heading over to Tom then. So Tom, yours is slightly different in that you've got a tech team, but again, you were very much used to working from the office. So how's that changed for you? And again, in terms of your management style, what do you think have kind of been the biggest changes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were used to everyone would come into the office. Although the individual team members had all at one point or another had worked from home, so they were set up mechanically, technically to do that. They weren't as a team used to everyone doing it at once. So the biggest change was that the collaboration. Whereas normally, if someone is working on something, because communication is specific to the what you were talking about, sometimes a quick huddle standing around is the best way of talking. Sometimes it's just a Slack update. Sometimes it's an email. Sometimes it's a face-to-face conversation. Sometimes it's going out for a walk to have a chat and talk and listen about it. So being robbed of those channels of communication and everything just being like either Slack or Zoom was the biggest change. And one thing that I did quite early on was make sure, not only having a daily stand-up, we would always at 10 o'clock to kick off the day have a daily stand-up kind of whip meeting. Yesterday I did this, today I'm going to do this. So kept that involved, but did an end of the day meeting. So the meetings became good morning and good evening. So every day we'd have a chat. So the evening meeting was no work talk allowed, and it helped keep that structure and the kind of the team cohesion, because once the novelty is worn off, and whether you do feel a bit like alone because you are, you know, stuck at home. And there's that sense of, well, and a lot of people have said they don't know what day of the week it is anymore because all the days are starting to blend into one. So having that structure, and you do know, oh well, this is a work day, at least, and you're keeping that kind of, it's still the team, even though this is an unprecedented time and everyone is scared about what's happening. The team still feels like it's a unit, it's a cohesive unit, because all of that stuff that happens in between work, the walking, going for a coffee, or having a chat, or bumping into each other, there's definitely time set aside for that, even if it doesn't happen during the day anyway.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. Yeah, and that I really like that idea of kind of no work chat allowed as well for your evening ones. That's a great idea. Good. Okay, so Chloe, you've obviously kind of had a bit more of a flexi working policy across your department. So what have kind of been your biggest changes that you've noticed going fully remote now and having everyone working remotely?
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of working from home. The introvert in me loves the quiet time at home without distractions to get project work done, and I've always trusted my team to do the same. But kind of very similar, to be honest, to what's been said. I think there was still a transition period for us. There was still an adjustment period, and it's sort of what Tom said. It's like that water cooler chat. It's the across the desk. Oh, did you hear about that? Did you know about that at the coffee bar? And I think we find so much of our information from that, or we have so much of our day-to-day chat from those mechanisms, and then suddenly that was wiped out. So I think quite quickly our weekly catch-up was just not enough anymore. So yeah, similar to Tom, we've got a daily 15-minute chat in the morning, and I say chat because I always insist that at least the first 5 minutes are personal stuff. We play a game, things like, say how you're feeling, and then what you have for dinner. So we've had happy Jaffa cakes and worried porridges and all sorts of different things like that. But I think by starting that conversation up like that and talking about how our weekends were or our evenings, you just gain a bit more of that connection that you've lost from the office. So yeah, I think really for me it was upping the communication, and we've got those smaller daily catch-ups and then bigger, wider team twice a week updates, and like you said as well, kind of the fun stuff on a Friday. So that was the biggest change.
Good, great. And that kind of, from all four of you, you've kind of got a big a pool of different things that you're all trialing, and different forms of communication, and how you're looking at it, and how you're kind of keeping everyone engaged with it. In terms of, Chloe, again, one for you, how are you keeping up the relationships with people in your team who are on furlough? So obviously you're looking after not just the people team, but the wider business as well. So how about those people that are on furlough that don't log in for those everyday calls or for those weekly catch-ups as well? What are you doing there to make sure they don't feel left out?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think first of all, it's really important to understand that everybody is very different and everybody is reacting to furlough very differently. So some people will be finding this much harder than others. I read a really good article recently, which it probably generalized a bit, but it put people into 3 buckets. And one of them was the kind of passion people, I guess they called them. And they were the people that suddenly they had all this time to pursue their passions outside of work. And they were, really enjoying that time. And for those people, actually, maybe they disengaged a little bit more from work because they were happy, but kind of the importance of still remembering that, include them, embrace their new passion. So maybe get them to present what they've been learning, their new musical instrument or their songs at your team calls or whatever it might be. And then there's the out of officers who before they even got the furlough agreement, their out of office was on, you haven't seen them on Slack. But I think, don't assume that that's because they're disengaged. I think isolation is really, really hard. And I think a lot of people will be switching off because they're caring for children or caring for relatives or all sorts of different things, or just struggling. And so those people might not want to constantly be bombarded with training options and business updates. But I think like inviting them to like the social events and things like that can be really important. So we did a desert island disc quiz last Friday, and lots of our furloughed people came along to that, and I think that's really nice to do. And then there's probably the other group who are before you even said furlough, they understood it. They probably offered to cut their wage. They're super engaged, and they're probably still trying to sneakily work on the side, which, by the way, they cannot. And it's really naughty. So don't let them do that. We'll be in big trouble. And they probably require a bit more business update. And I think for people like that, like a daily text can do wonders. Updating them what's going on, making sure they're definitely aware of things, making sure there's training and development available for them. I think making sure that's available for everyone, so it's fair, but for those people, just kind of reminding them of that stuff, and daily updates. And then, but I think as a kind of cadence minimum for anybody, I would say weekly is right. There's so much going on internally in Paymentsense, brand reveals, super pay updates, furlough changes, and then externally there's so much going on. So even those people that you think are living the dream right now in their gardens, don't underestimate, I think, the power of a weekly text from your manager, even if it's to say not much has happened. I think people's anxiety will be up and down and all over the place at the moment. So I'd say weekly at least.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And I think it's important the point you make around don't write them off just because they don't join in everything. Still keep going, still invite them to these things, still keep them engaged with this information. And if they choose to take it, great. And if they don't, never mind. At least you've kind of not written them off for it. Okay, good. All right. So Tom, you've obviously, in your department, you had at the beginning of all this, when this all first started and we started working from home, there was the decision from George and Jan and from the business to let the contractors go. Now, your team probably took the biggest hit, the development department probably took the biggest hit with that. So what's kind of been the fallout from that, and how have you dealt with that in the team in terms of the rest of the team that are left? What's been the emotional impact on them, and how are you managing that?
I mean, the biggest thing for the team members that are there is the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The biggest question that I got after all of the phone calls were made was, "Am I next? Is that it?" Now, the communication and the way that we did it, it was very as soon as we knew that we had to do this, and we knew that the decisions were made, the contractors were called individually by their direct managers, and Nick Fryer had a conversation with each of them, so that it was done. It's a horrible thing to do, a whole thing to have to do, but it was done like, you know, efficiently with respect, and as soon as everyone was aware, I blocked out all of my time to answer questions. So for my team, there's a lot of the people are graduates, so this is their first job. And while this, I was able to say to them, like, this is unprecedented. This is the first time that this is happening for me. So I can't give you any more answers about what's going to happen. I can tell you everything that I know, and this is everything that I know, and it's being available and just listening, and it's the honesty, it's the being honest and transparent, but saying as well, because the information that came down was, this is it for now, and it was just being clear that it was just contractors. And when we unfortunately made the calls, like the contractors weren't, a lot of them were saying, oh, I was expecting that this is what the call could be about, but we'd also said that because we work hard to hire the right people here to make the team, so when all of this is returned to whatever the form is normally, saying, well, as soon as we can, we're going to be picking up the phone back to you to get you back. So and being able to say that to the team as well, to you know, sort out the kind of there's also that element of fear and uncertainty and doubt, but also this kind of survivor's guilt of that, and saying, well, this is, you know, this is as temporary as it can be, but again, just listening, answering questions, and then saying, I don't, you know, admitting, saying I don't know, but this is what I can do. This is what I will do. This is what the company are doing, and it followed on from hearing the whole department heard from Nick. The whole department heard from George and Jan in the town hall. So it was having that, not only listening to what they were saying and what they were thinking about emotionally, but having the clear, honest, all of the information back to them was the biggest help for that.
And you said there that you blocked out time for your guys to speak to you after it happened. Did you find that you had a good uptake of that? Were people coming to you to ask more questions about it, or did you probe that a bit?
Absolutely. Like I blocked out time for that. I didn't say, oh, if anyone's, I didn't explicitly say, oh, if everyone's got any questions about this, because everyone, I didn't have time to say that before, you know, people were, you know, sending me Slack messages or whatever. And with that, I picked up the phone straight away to give it not the sense of, you know, gravitas, but just saying like that this is I'm making time for this. This is an important thing. This isn't just, I will send you a Slack message and then consider it done. Like, you want to make sure that I'm to you feel that I'm available, so I can listen how you feel, and tell you how I feel, you know, as well, without making them, you know, the lodestone. You don't, you know, you don't do that. But yeah, it was just being able to for them to feel that I've made time for them, so they can ask questions and then get all the information that they can.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's really good. Okay, good. So this one's for Jodie. So obviously some people are in tough positions at the moment, either with ill friends or relatives, or they've got parents or loved ones in isolation who are in complete lockdown. And people, obviously, as we talked about earlier, people are going to struggle with their mental health and well-being. So it could be hard as a manager, first of all, to identify it, but then it's even harder to be able to deal with it. So how are you nurturing relationships with your team members so they feel comfortable enough to talk to you about their struggles? And how do you kind of get to that point in your relationship where you do have that kind of trust and openness to be able to discuss these things with your team?
I think before we even started working from home, especially in like our environment, you're seeing people all day, every day. And you're interacting all the time as well. So then relationships are naturally formed anyway, where you trust each other. And a lot of people who work in Hull have actually worked in Hull for quite some time. So we don't have quite like a high turnover of staff. So some people who've been on my team, have been on my team for 3 years. So you just naturally build that open relationship with them. But I think one of the things that I found at first, the people who were struggling in our stand-ups and things, they weren't being very vocal. So I could just tell that they weren't really getting involved as much as they maybe normally would on Slack channels, and maybe might be a bit more quiet. So what I did was I reached out just directly to those people and just started that conversation, like some of the questions that you put up on the first few slides, just asking how they are. There was one example actually, one of the guys on my team was really struggling. I think it was about 3 weeks in. He lives by himself, doesn't really have much family in Hull. I think he's got his mum and his sister because they're not actually from Hull. So what we did with him, he was really, really struggling. But I gave him, sorry if you can hear that noise, it's my dog drinking some water. But we offered him, like, if he wanted to maybe take some annual leave, just to try and reevaluate, you know, just get all his thoughts together, have a couple of days off. And then the other options that we offered him was just to take him off the phones for like a few days, just to see how he felt. I'm sorry if can you hear it? Is it really loud? Yeah, so we took him off the phones for a couple of days and give him some admin work to do, just so he didn't have that constant customer kind of interaction, just so he could play some music in the background, just kind of focus on the work he was doing at hand. And then the other option that we actually offered him was to maybe reduce his hours for a week or so. So it was full-time, just maybe reducing it to part-time, just to see if he could manage it a little bit more. Extra breaks, things like that. To be honest, the thing that worked the most was giving him that admin time, just to take him off the phones for a few hours, and just so he could focus on the work he was actually doing in hand. To be honest, I've found that the people that were struggling maybe like 2-3 weeks in have actually overcome that now. And now they're kind of not enjoying it, because I think it's quite a difficult thing to do, work from home, when you are used to the office. But I think they're getting more used to it, and kind of they're seeing the way that the business is going. And we've had some really positive updates over the last couple of days. Obviously the super pay stuff and everything like that. So I think those reinforcing them positive messages all the time, I think it's really increasing their motivation to actually carry on working. And as a result of that now, like this guy who I was talking about in particular, he's the one who's always starting the conversations in the chats. Like, he's the one always getting involved with everyone. He's like offered to do a quiz next week. So I think it's just making sure that you're reaching out directly to them people who do show those signs of maybe they are struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think adapting where you can on their work is really great. So giving that admin focus or whatever it is absolutely vital for some people, to just give them that break or give them that new kind of perspective. And then secondly, what you're just touching upon there is that giving them purpose, really. So with all the positive updates, giving them purpose to the work they're doing, and giving them some kind of goals to reach in order to get there and drive not just them, but the team, and then the business and everything behind it as well. Thank you, Jodie. So drawing on that, Alex, obviously yours is slightly different. Jodie, like she said, has had relationships built for years with some of her team members. You're very new to your role and very new to your team. So how have you dealt with it? How have you been able to kind of make sure that your team feel able to talk to you as their new manager?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting time really for all this to be happening. And in addition to that, I had a new member join my team literally a week before this happened. Still somebody that works in the business, but they came from another team to my team. So I had a new relationship with my team, but an even newer one with this one particular individual. So the amount of time I've had to spend on the phone with each team member over the last few weeks has been absolutely immense. Just to try and continue to build those relationships and sort of build the trust and the credibility with those people. I think what's really, really helped during this kind of situation has just been how honest I've been able to be with the team. Sort of just sticking to facts, being honest with them, telling them what you know. I think sometimes managers feel like there's a need to, if you don't know the answer to something, to almost put a spin on something that sounds winning and good. But I kind of find that if you don't know the answer, it's perfectly acceptable to just say, look, I don't know the answer right now, but I'm going to go away and find out for you. And you earn far more points by coming back with the correct, credible answer than you do if you try and blag it and and get found out. So for me, it's just really about sticking to the facts, being open and honest with the team, having those regular conversations that are nothing to do with their targets or their work. Just checking in as often as possible, and slowly but surely over the last few weeks that sort of team bond is really starting to show. So so far it's working quite well, and to be honest, I'm looking forward to getting back in the office with the team, because I think this experience will probably have just brought everybody so much closer together.
Yeah, I agree. I think putting in the legwork at the beginning is crucial to any relationships. It's spending that time, carving out that time to really build those relationships. Good. Okay, so Chloe, for you, what point then if you see people struggling, at what point does it then become more than just kind of checking in and asking if they're okay? And what actions do our managers, or what resources do our managers have available to help deal with something that might be even deeper rooted?
Yeah, good question. I think also just like adding to what Alex said, 'cause I think you made some really good points around like putting in the time, but also like managers, I think sometimes feel like they have to be this stern leader, setting the goals, and yeah, that's incredibly important. People need to know what they need to work on and what's important, but I think be vulnerable yourself sometimes, and if you don't talk about how you feel sometimes or what you've done at the weekend, it is very hard for somebody in your team to tell you. Nobody wants to talk to that manager who never says anything about themselves. So sometimes I say to my team, I'm feeling a bit rubbish today. I'm a bit worried. Like Alex said, I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. And that's okay, you know, to do that sometimes. So I think that's a really important thing. And but in terms of when it becomes more serious, I think first of all, like early intervention is key. We've kind of brought this up a lot, but I think sometimes managers think they have to have special skills to talk about that stuff, and you don't. You have the skills that you use every day, and people won't necessarily bring it up with you unless you ask. So that's really important. But yeah, we have a duty of care for these people as their employer. So Jodie mentioned about making adjustments for people. I think that's really important where we can. Often really small little things can make a big difference for those people. I think, always where they are really, really struggling, encourage them to go and see their GP as well. In the first instance, GPs can be brilliant for that stuff. We've got an EAP here as well. So I've had incredible feedback from the people that have used it. I think sometimes people think they're not really sure of how to use it, what it is, but the people that have used it here, we've heard some really great things. So that's available 24 hours a day, and it's just a number that they can call for advice on honestly anything, legal advice, mental health advice, millions of different things that can be causing them stress. So always reminding them of those things. But then also there's amazing charities out there doing incredible things as well. So Mind have brilliant resources, telephone lines, Samaritans, lots and lots of places that they can go. And I do think the best thing is always for a manager to start those conversations themselves. They know the people better than anyone else, but of course also come and talk to us, come and talk to HR, and we can also help. You can look at things like wellness recovery plans, so you can have a bit of an agreement between a manager and employee where you look at maybe the triggers for somebody's mental health and what support they might need, and then also maybe who to contact if there is a real issue. So it's almost like a written agreement between the manager and the employee. So there's kind of various different things. I think it's remembering all mental health is very different. All the symptoms are very different. All the treatments and how people feel better are very different. So deal with it on an individual basis, and if you're really unsure, come and talk to us. But as I said, there's so many brilliant resources out there online as well to look at.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've linked a couple of the resources at the end of this session as well, but you're right. And I think it's important that as managers as well, we know that Chloe is here and her team are here for us to go and speak to and get guidance on this, and they do their weekly HR drop-ins as well. So it's always a good chance to kind of ask, right, how do I deal with the situation? Okay, so we're coming towards the end of our session, and I want to get a few questions from the audience. So if you've got any questions, guys, just pop them into the chat box. We have one already from Teresa, so I just want to open this up to all of you really to answer. So Teresa asks, have any of you found that the introverts in your teams have found the increased messaging and Zoom calls quite stressful?
Yeah, me. That's me. I'm the biggest introvert there are. You might not guess it, but yeah, me. And I think boundaries are really important on those things. Don't have calls for the sake of calls. We've talked about having like frequent calls, but don't have calls for the sake of calls. And I think encourage your team to use Do Not Disturb and things like that on Slack as well, where they can. I find that incredible. My lunch break or whenever I just need to have a moment to myself, use that Do Not Disturb. People should respect it. I think Zoom, I read this amazing article of how they're more draining than face-to-face meetings. And I can send it to you if you want, Teresa, but there's all sorts of tips and tricks on that as well. But I think it's being aware of your people, being aware of the introverts and extroverts, and sort of tailoring communication for them. the introverts might not need to be overwhelmed with calls and messages all the time. But yeah, allow them to set boundaries, encourage them not to always be online. Ooh, sorry, there's background noise. If they overwork themselves, they're just going to become less productive. But yeah, just understand your people, tailor things to them as well, and don't put calls in for the sake of calls. Make sure they're useful.
Thank you. Anyone else add to that?
I think with I mean, obviously with the situation where obviously we work in an office, me and Alex, all the time, and it's full of obviously a wide range of personalities. You kind of get a feel for who the introverts are anyway, because when things like Beer Fridays and things like that are going on, you'll tend to find that they're quite quiet, unless they've had a beer, who knows, but normally they're quite quiet. And then I found that if on the Zoom calls that I'm having with my guys, if they are quiet, I'll just maybe reach out to them after, drop them a quick Slack message, just making sure everything's okay. That's the way that I've kind of got around it anyway, just trying to excuse me, just reaching out to them directly, just to make sure that everything is okay. And to be honest, if they don't really want to come onto the calls, unless it's like the company updates or whatever, they don't really have to. It's completely up to them. So I've kind of made it a bit of an optional thing. So if they wouldn't like to come onto a call every single day and maybe want to do it 3 times a week, I'm more than happy to put that out to my guys anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right, asking them as well, kind of setting that expectation and asking what do you want, what do you expect from me, and how often do you want to catch up, and that kind of thing is a great idea. Okay, good. Are there any other questions from anyone, any of our audience today? If you have, just pop them into the chat box. I'm also going to just share my screen with a couple of resources while we do that. Okay, so it doesn't look like there's any more questions coming through. So on that note then, just a few resources that I've linked up here for you as we come to the end of the session. There's a great report from Deloitte around mental health and wellbeing in the workplace. Some really good sort of hints and tips, and just a bit of background about it as well, and things you should look out for. As Chloe said, Mind do some great guides. There's multiple guides there. There's one for line managers, but there's stuff around, like she said, coming back into the workplace after mental health and things like that. So have a read of those as well. I'll send these slides out to everyone that's attended. CIPD do a great people managers guide to mental health as well, again with kind of questions that you can ask and things that you can help your guys with. And there's some good articles on it on the Business Insider as well. And the final thing is, you've all got access to LinkedIn Learning as well. There's some great short modules on there, short videos on how to have difficult conversations around mental health, how to look after your own well-being as well, and just courses and things that you can sit, but you can also recommend to your team to sit. And the videos, they're short videos as well. They're not very long at all, so you can just send those links out to them as well. So I've put the link on there for you. Okay, so next week's session is Leadership Mindsets. We've got Hugo Souza and George Frost as our guest panelists, and we're talking about how to keep a leadership mindset for during this time and beyond that as well, and how to keep that sort of teaming culture going as well. But I want to say special thanks to everyone for joining us today, and particular thanks to our panels. It's the first panel, it's not the easiest one to ever do, but you've been great. You've shared some great insights and some great sort of actions and tips and hints and stuff for people. So thank you very much. I hope you can all join us next Monday at 9:30. And yeah, if you've got any questions, do follow up. We'll be sending out the recording and the slides afterwards. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Have a lovely day, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.